Okay, so I'm ready to pull up, making sure my clay is nice and wet and the wheel is at a speed that I'm comfortable with. I'm going to start, let's look at my hands. 1, 2, 3. These 3 fingers go inside. This finger is gently resting against the side of the pot. This finger goes over the top, and the lip kind of rests in the nook of these 2 fingers. This finger's nice and relaxed, as well as these. My thumb just kind of dangles down there, not doing too much. With this hand, 1, 2, 3, go on the wheel. This finger also goes on the wheel. My thumb is tucked under, kind of like making a sign language E. I rest those fingers on the wheel, and then this part of this finger and this part of this finger are going to slowly squeeze together and work their way up the piece. Now, there's a couple things you need to know when you pull. The first thing is that the clay there's obviously a bottom to the pot, so this finger is lower than this one. So before you start moving this finger, you got to let this one catch up with it. So you're going to push here, get them even, and then come up. The other thing that you want to avoid doing is that a lot of beginners, especially when they get to the top, they go like this and they pinch the lip together, and you want to resist the urge to do that. In resisting the urge to do that, however, make sure you come to the top. Some beginners will go right here and then they'll stop because they're afraid of messing up the top. So the best thing to think about is pretend like you have a bunch more clay up here that you still have to pull. And if you pull through and then you just leave your hands in that position and bring your hands off the clay, sometimes that's easier to just kind of imagine that you have more to go and not to get nervous when you get to the top. So here we go. I'm going to make a groove down here in the bottom. Okay, coming up. Now my fingers are even, so I'm going to pull them up together. I'm getting to the top. I'm going to pretend like I have more clay and just slowly take my hands off. And that's my first pull. Now I've got some junk on the top. That's just slurry and stuff from the side of the pot. And those kinds of things are important to ignore, because if you're worried about that little bit of clay that you can easily wipe off with a sponge in a minute, you're going to mess up your piece because you're too worried about that. Okay, I'm ready to do it again. Make my groove. Now they're even. Pull straight up together. And I don't panic when I get to the top. And this is getting a little off center, so I'm gently going back into this little position of getting the clay back on center, compressing the top. This time I'm not really going to pull, I'm just kind of straightening out the walls. Okay, notice that the clay isn't flaring out like this, it's not going like this. If you're having that problem, which most beginners do when they get started, a couple things you might think about. Number one is consider the speed of your wheel. It perhaps is going too fast. And number two, make sure you're pulling straight up and you're not coming in towards you like this. Okay? Give yourself plenty of room to work. Scoot out from the clay when you need to. Scoot in when you need to. Get right over the clay. Do what you need to do to get yourself in the right position to work with the clay. Okay. Now, one of the things that I have to do here is, because of the little wobbles and things, this has gotten a little bit uneven on the top. So I'm going to trim the lip. Putting this hand inside, holding the pointer tool in this hand, kind of going into this. I'm not going straight in, I'm going in on the side, letting that cut the clay till that needle gently touches my finger on the inside, and then I pull up. Like that. Now, because I was trying to slow that process down, that maybe wasn't as smooth as I wanted it, and so I got it off center again. So I'm just gently going back to the centering position, compressing the top. Okay, so here I have a nice basic cylinder shape. Taking my sponge, holding it like this so I don't bump the sides. I'm just cleaning out the water. Okay, and that's the first thing I need to learn how to do, is throw a cylinder. So once you have that down, then you can get into doing the other fun things like vases and bowls and things like that. And I could do other things with this cylinder. For example, I could collar in, and I'm going to collar it just a smidge because it does flare just a little bit. Just kind of gently working the clay to come in. Gently bringing my hands off, compressing the top again. Okay, that looks like a pretty good cylinder. So the next step is I have to get the piece ready for trimming. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to finish up the top. What I'm going to do for that is I'm going to take a piece of chamois, which, you know, just a regular old chamois stuff that you use to polish and dry, wash your car. I've cut it into a strip. It's a nice soft cloth that's very, very wet. I just drape it over the lip, kind of like this, and let the clay go through it. And it just gives it a nice, smooth, rounded lip. Okay? Didn't use a lot of pressure to do that. Just kind of let that set on the top and smooth itself. Okay. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is, there's extra clay on the bottom of this piece, and that's called support clay. Some of that clay needs to stay there while this piece is drying. Some of it I can probably get rid of right now, so I don't have to trim as much off later. So I'm going to use my pointer tool first, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make what's called the train tracks. That's what I call it with my kids. And I'm just making a track or a little groove in the bottom because I'm going to put a wire underneath that in a minute, and I want the wire to know where to go. So that's why it's called the train track. The train track is the groove, the wire is the train. Okay, so I've made that little groove in the bottom. I'll stop it so you can see. That's where my wire is going to go. But I've got extra clay on the bottom, like a lot of people do, especially when they're beginning. And I want to cut some of that off right now. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to come in at an angle with my pointer tool. I'm going to go down at an angle until I hit this bat. This is called a bat, by the way, the plastic piece on the wheel. I'm going to go down until I hit the bat, and then I'm going to stop. So here I go. I'm just gently going down the side, kind of at an angle until I hit the bat. Okay, now I'm going to use my wire, run my fingers over it to get any glumps or little pieces of clay off, and dip it in the water so it's wet. Slowly turn my wheel, turn my wire in my hands like dental floss, thumbs putting pressure, put that flat against the wheel. And because the wheel's moving, it will help that wire go right through the train tracks. Okay? Now, I'm going to take my pointer tool, make a little cut in this ribbon of clay, and just scrape that away. And this is all clay that I would have had to trim off anyway. Okay? So, now, this piece is ready to dry, and then later I'll go back in with trim tools and I'll trim more of this off, and this sharp edge won't be there anymore. It'll go away. And I will put a foot in the bottom and I'll be done. So this is how you do the basic cylinder shape in pottery, and you got to learn this shape first before you do anything else. The next thing that we need to do now is, once this pot dries, we will trim it. And I have other videos of trimming that you can check out also on my channel if you need help with that. So, good luck with your pottery, and I hope this video was helpful. If it was, leave me a comment. Talk to you soon. Adios.